Welcome everyone to today's webinar, No Vapes in Cyberspace, How to Stop Commercial Sales of Tobacco via the Internet. I'm Susan Wiseman, a Senior Staff Attorney at the Public Health Law Center, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Before we dive in, I'd like to say a few words about the Public Health Law Center for those of you who may be new to us. The center's based in St. Paul, Minnesota at Mitchell-Hamlin School of Law on land that is situated within the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. We collaborate with others on policy work to reduce and eliminate commercial tobacco, promote healthy food, support physical activity, and address other causes of chronic disease. We work closely with tribal health leaders, federal agencies, state and local governments, national and local public health advocacy organizations, community coalitions, researchers, planners, attorneys, and others who, like us, are working to improve public health through policy change. The combination of our depth of knowledge, thoughtful analysis, and tailored approach to technical assistance helps our partners support the development of healthier communities. Our commitment to advancing equity and health equity is a core component of our policy work and integral to all we do. We offer many types of legal technical assistance, including evidence-based legal research, assistance with the development of sample policy language, troubleshooting implementation and enforcement issues that arise, and helping to defend policies that come under attack. We develop many publications which we post to our website, and we conduct frequent trainings and webinars such as this one on important topics. We do not provide direct representation of clients, and we do not engage in lobbying. Effective regulation of online sales is an essential component of a comprehensive strategy to halt the current epidemic of teen and young adult use of e-cigarettes and other commercial tobacco products. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the current regulatory landscape, including regulations to completely prohibit internet sales, shipments, deliveries, and distributions directly to consumers of all ages. Again, I'm Susan Wiseman, a Senior Staff Attorney since 2001, and I provide legal technical assistance on commercial tobacco in Minnesota and other states. It's my pleasure to introduce Julie Amajuoyi, my colleague here at the center, as today's presenter. Julie earned her Bachelor of Science degree in psychology summa cum laude from the University of Minnesota. She also has a graduate degree from the University of Notre Dame in theological ethics. She obtained her law degree from Cornell University School of Law, where she served as the managing editor of the Journal on Law and Policy. Before joining our staff last year, Julie was a litigation associate at the Chicago law firm of Winston and Strawn, where she engaged in complex commercial litigation. She has worked with Catholic Charities, providing legal assistance to low-income clients, and she has extensive pro bono experience, including assisting immigrants with their attempts to seek asylum in the United States. Here at the center, Julie is responsible for providing legal technical assistance on commercial tobacco to those we work with in Minnesota, California, and other states. And with that, I'll hand this over to Julie to give her presentation.
Thank you, Susan. So why should we care about internet sales of commercial tobacco products? We know that young underage persons can and do acquire tobacco products via the internet. And the ready availability of tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, can undermine efforts to protect public health and to prevent youth tobacco use initiation. The fact that online tobacco retailers may be able to bypass laws designed to prevent sales to underage persons can significantly undermine tobacco control efforts. Hence, comprehensive tobacco control policies should also take into account online sales of tobacco products, including e-cigarettes. With the boom in popularity among young people of e-cigarettes, a product widely available online, as well as with the rising health concerns about the possible serious health risks associated with e-cigarette use, the public health community has urgent reason to tackle online tobacco sales. And given the significant challenges involved with regulating internet sales of tobacco products, as well as the fact that substantial evidence indicates that age verification processes are largely ineffective, a complete prohibition on all internet sales and shipments of tobacco products is likely the most effective way to prevent sales to underage persons and to protect the public health gains accomplished by minimum legal sales age laws. In this webinar, we'll talk first about the current landscape of internet and delivery-based commercial tobacco product sales. And then we'll look at the measures that local, states, and federal governments can take to address online sales of tobacco products. First, the current landscape. In addition to classic mail order sales and the numerous online retailers of tobacco products, we see today growing prevalence of internet app-based retailers and delivery services that are very popular among young people. These on-demand delivery retailers rely on internet app-based customer orders. Examples of these services include GoPuff, StoreList, Saucy, Pink Dot, and Postmates, to name a few. These retailers may be able to bypass tobacco retailer laws by avoiding detection as tobacco retailers. One representative example of this new breed of internet-based delivery on-demand tobacco retailers is GoPuff, which bills itself as the first digital convenience retailer. GoPuff was originally an on-demand hookah product delivery-based retailer in Philadelphia, but rapidly expanded to delivering typical convenience store items in over 100 US cities, including cities small and large, as well as rural communities with colleges. GoPuff's locations are strategically positioned close to colleges and universities. Customers place orders, including for alcohol and tobacco products in some of GoPuff's locations. And according to GoPuff, these products are delivered in about 30 minutes or less. Saucy, another on-demand delivery-based tobacco retailer, deals almost exclusively with liquor and tobacco products, delivering these products in various major US cities, including Washington, DC, New York, and Chicago. Other major internet retailers of tobacco products, such as Juul Labs, may also present regulatory challenges, and Juul e-cigarettes, as we know, are very popular with young people. On Juul's website, customers are able to purchase e-cigarettes, which are shipped directly to them, and they are encouraged to enter into a subscription service that automates their free product shipments. While many of these online tobacco retailers, including Juul, claim to verify age by checking customers' IDs at purchase and at delivery, many of these age verification processes are flawed and ineffective. In fact, studies indicate that nearly 100% of youth attempt to purchase e-cigarettes online or any tobacco products online are successful. In addition, effective compliance monitoring and enforcement of these online retailers is difficult. Several states and cities, as will be discussed, have sued online tobacco retailers, including Juul, for selling tobacco products, particularly e-cigarettes, to underage persons. Finally, besides the traditional internet platforms, a limited but significant illicit tobacco trade occurs on non-traditional platforms known as the dark net or dark web, a subsection of the internet that requires specialized software and offers anonymity to its users. Reports indicate that globally, the illicit cigarette market accounts for up to 11.6% of tobacco consumption and results in a revenue loss for governments of over $40 billion. And according to one study, between 2016 and 2017 alone, global revenues generated from the illicit tobacco trade increased over 150%. So what can local, state, and federal governments do to address online sales of tobacco products? First, we'll look at what local communities can do. One measure that local jurisdictions have pursued to address internet sales of tobacco products to underage persons is litigation. Examples of jurisdictions that have pursued this measure are New York City and Chicago. In October 2019, New York City filed a lawsuit against 22 online retailers for selling flavored e-cigarettes to young people below the age of 21. According to the suit, the defendants failed to employ available age verification services and delivered products to underage New York City residents without any identity and age verification and without obtaining a signature. All 22 companies are based outside of New York. This case is ongoing. Even prior to New York City, Chicago also employed litigation to address online sales of tobacco products to youth. To date, Chicago has filed at least 4 lawsuits against online tobacco retailers for illegally selling vaping products to Chicago residents under the age of 21. In November 2018, the city filed a lawsuit against 8 online e-cigarette retailers. And in February 2019, another lawsuit was filed this time against 27 online tobacco retailers. According to these suits, the defendants failed to verify age both at purchase and at delivery. While these suits are ongoing, there has already been some positive result. In one of the suits, 3 of the sellers involved have ceased sales of e-liquids entirely, and at least 1 has left the Chicago market area. The city of Chicago has since filed 2 other lawsuits against online tobacco retailers. Besides regulation, cities and counties may also employ regulation. Where state law does not limit local authority on the issue, local jurisdictions may completely prohibit direct-to-consumer sales and shipments or deliveries of tobacco products within their jurisdiction. And this would include prohibiting the sale and delivery of tobacco and tobacco-related products through on-demand delivery-based, internet-based delivery businesses. Local jurisdictions can also require local tobacco retailer licenses for all sales and may define tobacco retailer to include only fixed location businesses that serve walk-in customers, requiring all sales to take place in face-to-face transactions. Note that federal law does not limit tribal, state, or local authority to take such action. San Francisco, which is home to the corporate headquarters of Juul Labs, is a great example of a jurisdiction that has employed regulation to address online sales of tobacco products. San Francisco prohibits online sales and any form of distribution of e-cigarettes and flavored tobacco products to anyone in the city. Internet-based businesses are prohibited from shipping or delivering flavored tobacco products and e-cigarettes to San Francisco residents. And given the enforcement challenges associated with regulating internet-based non-fixed location business models, a complete prohibition of tobacco sales, shipments, and deliveries by such businesses is likely the strongest, most effective regulatory option. So we've talked about what local communities can do. What can states do? Like the cities of Chicago and New York, states can also pursue litigation against online tobacco retailers. In fact, recently, several states, including California, North Carolina, Minnesota, Illinois, and Arizona, have filed suits against Juul for selling products to underaged persons, among other claims. And states can also enact legislation. And given the jurisdictional limitations of local governments, states are perhaps better positioned to enact effective policies in this domain. But there are some potential legal issues to keep in mind here. First, there is no constitutional barrier to states regulating or even entirely prohibiting direct-to-consumer sales and shipments of tobacco products within their jurisdiction. But some federal laws may limit the authority of a state to impose barriers or to regulate the common carriers or delivery companies, not the tobacco retailers themselves, but the common carriers or delivery companies that actually deliver the tobacco products. And one major federal law which limits state authority to regulate common carriers is the Prevent All Cigarette Trafficking Act, or the PACT Act. But states, notably New York State, have successfully pursued litigation, even against common carriers, for violating state and federal laws and agreements. And more recently, in 2018, the United States Supreme Court in South Dakota versus Wayfair upheld the authority of a state to require out-of-state sellers, including online retailers, that engage in substantial business within the state to collect and remit sales tax to the state. While states may be somewhat limited with respect to regulating common carriers or delivery companies, they retain significant authority to regulate and even to entirely prohibit direct-to-consumer sales and shipments of tobacco products, including e-cigarettes. And federal law does not limit the authority to take such action. And currently, at least 12 states have laws that prohibit direct-to-consumer sales and shipments of some tobacco products. And at least 6 have even more comprehensive laws that cover e-cigarettes. Now, let's talk about what the federal government can do. There are 2 key federal laws that apply to internet sales of tobacco products. One is the Prevent All Cigarette Trafficking Act, which we mentioned, and the other is the Tobacco Control Act of 2009. The PACT Act, the Prevent All Cigarette Trafficking Act, was a significant step in regulating internet sales of tobacco products, but it contains significant loopholes. And the Tobacco Control Act's provisions relating to internet sales has yet to be implemented. First, let's look at the key provisions of the PACT Act. The PACT Act prohibits the online sale of cigarettes and smokeless tobacco to anyone under the legal sales age in their state. It also requires that an internet-based retailer who ships tobacco label the packages as containing tobacco, verify age and identity at purchase, use a method of mailing or shipping that checks ID and obtains a customer's signature at delivery, and pay state taxes and comply with state laws as if the sale occurred within the state. It also prohibits the shipment and transport of cigarettes and smokeless tobacco through the US mail. Finally, and importantly, the PACT Act preserves the authority of states to prohibit internet-based retailers from shipping cigarettes and smokeless tobacco products to customers and residential addresses within their states. But as I noted, the PACT Act contains significant gaps or limitations. And the most serious gap is that it only covers cigarettes and smokeless tobacco and does not cover e-cigarettes, cigars, and other tobacco products. In addition, it significantly limits state ability to regulate common carriers such as UPS and FedEx. States, for instance, cannot require them to check IDs or to obtain signatures at delivery. But note that internet-based on-demand retailers such as GoPuff, which deliver products directly to customers using their own drivers, are not common carriers, and so are likely not covered by the PACT Act's exemption for common carriers. Hence, they likely remain subject to state regulation. In addition, because the Act only covers cigarettes and smokeless tobacco, states can likely still regulate common carriers where other tobacco products such as cigars and e-cigarettes are involved. And finally, as I mentioned, the Act allows states to entirely prohibit internet-based retailers from making delivery sales of cigarettes and smokeless tobacco. Another important federal law in this domain is the Tobacco Control Act of 2009. This law gives the FDA clear authority and instruction to adopt a regulation to control internet sales of tobacco to youth. And the Act established a deadline for this regulation, October 1st, 2011. To date, however, more than 8 years later, the FDA has yet to propose a regulation consistent with this duty. In conclusion, in the absence of comprehensive and effective federal regulation on the problem of internet sales of tobacco products to young people, tribes, states, and local governments can close many of the existing loopholes. Tribes, states, and local governments who are not preempted by the state have authority to prohibit internet-based retailers from selling and shipping tobacco products to consumers within their borders. And in light of substantial evidence indicating that age verification processes are largely ineffective, as well as the difficulties of compliance monitoring and enforcement, a complete prohibition on direct-to-consumer shipments of tobacco products is likely the most effective way to prevent youth access to online tobacco products, including e-cigarettes.
Thank you, Julie, for that very nice presentation. Before we queue up questions, I'd like to point everyone to our website resources. We have a newly updated piece on online sales of e-cigarettes and other tobacco products that Julie took the lead on, and that tracks very closely with the presentation she just gave. In addition, we have a new table that summarizes the state laws that have been enacted to prohibit online sales of e-cigarettes. This is our contact information, and we very much encourage you to reach out to us with any additional questions you might have that we can't get to today on our webinar. And of course, if you have any technical assistance needs, we welcome those as well. We have just a few minutes remaining, and I will now turn to those questions so that we can use the remaining minutes to answer as many as possible. Julie, you mentioned enforcement mechanisms. What are some of the implementation and enforcement mechanisms that this type of legislation entails?
Well, as with every regulation, the first and critical step is public education, ensuring that retailers are aware of the regulations as well as of the penalties for violations. And in setting penalties, it is important that these be imposed primarily against the online tobacco retailers and that they are significant enough to achieve deterrence. It is also important that the jurisdiction institute an effective compliance monitoring process. We've put together, as Susan mentioned, a chart of the 6 states that prohibit internet sales and shipments of tobacco products. And this chart includes a column on the penalties and enforcement provisions of these states' laws with active links to their statutory language. And we'll be updating this to include Massachusetts. Finally, we are available to provide individualized technical assistance to jurisdictions, state as well as local, interested in pursuing various regulatory measures.
Okay, next question is, what initial steps can be taken in jurisdictions that want to strengthen regulation of online sales but lack the current capacity or buy-in to enact legislation?
Well, the first and the most important step is public education. Increasing awareness of the issue can go a long way toward building the political will to enact effective and comprehensive regulation. It is also important that jurisdictions assess existing laws to identify gaps and needs. Also, jurisdictions should conduct compliance checks to the full extent possible to enforce compliance with existing laws. Finally, a state or local jurisdiction could also require all tobacco retailers, including online retailers, to obtain a license to sell tobacco products within that jurisdiction.
And then finally, we have time for just one more question. We've received a few questions from viewers asking if we have sample language templates for state and local ordinances or a summary of implementation strategies available. Could you respond to that?
Well, given the differences between jurisdictions, we favor providing individualized technical assistance. We are providing technical assistance to state and local governments on this issue. And we encourage jurisdictions to contact us and we can work with you to craft policies tailored to the jurisdiction specific needs and circumstances.
Okay, so we're at time and we'll have to stop here. I'd like to remind folks that we will respond offline to the questions we weren't able to get to today. We have a survey coming out, so please keep an eye on that about today's webinar. And thank you for joining us. Goodbye.